Hey, what's up? It's me again. That's the whole intro. So, so let's talk about. Have you ever wondered to yourself, hey, what would Watch Mojo be like if nobody watched them? Well, you're weird, but also in luck because that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. Today, we're going to be ranking every single Cyberpunk themed video game released in 2020 by a Polish studio that had performance issues on last gen consoles at launch, of which there are two, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. And at number 2, we have Cyberpunk. I haven't actually played Cyberpunk. Look, I want to, but I'm too lazy to build a PC and it runs complete garbage doo-doo on consoles right now, so I'm probably just gonna wait it out for like the next gen version. Listen, if you guys want to be in on a really big secret here, I actually made this whole ranking thing up so I could talk about the other game on the list. I know, I don't believe it either. Was it a very roundabout way to talk about a game that I liked? Yes, but in fairness, look, is that a change in subject? Okay, so let's talk about the actual subject of this video, which is... Ghostrunner's really good, guys. And you should go buy it. For real though, I bought it within the first few weeks of its launch, and that was a few months ago, and within the first 2 weeks I had beaten it 3 times and done a bunch of speedrun competitions with my brother, plus I beat its hardcore mode the day after it got added, which is pretty significant because that thing kicked my ass. So, like, guys, it's like really good. Well, I guess that's the end of the video, bye. Nah, I'm just playing, man. I got stuff to say, okay. Indie games are gaining a lot of popularity by the year, which is pretty awesome because some of my favorite games of all time, like Hades, Mark of the Ninja, Dead Cells, Hollow Knight, Cuphead, are all indie games. I guess you could say that indie genre is kind of my cup of tea. God, I'm so funny. Ghostrunner is another indie game that deserves all of the love and support coming its way. It knows exactly what it is and it totally nails it. It also seems like it doesn't feel the need to add a bunch of unnecessary BS like you typically see in a lot of AAA video games. Not all of them, but like... what is this? In my opinion, even though there are indie games that can be complex, adventurous, and multifaceted, it's more often than not the simplicity of these games and their focus on 1 or 2 main mechanics or ideas that usually makes these games so amazing. Look at the Metroidvania genre. There are so many games in this genre, and the games that started it like 35 years ago were already really good. Seriously, I played the original Castlevania like a year ago, and it still holds up. Like, it's really good. You'd think the genre would have run its course by now, but year after year, there seems to be more games that are Metroidvanias that people seem to fall in love with. And I think a lot of it is because a lot of these games have a focus on one small corner of the genre, while making sure that everything that isn't the focus is still good enough to make it seem like the game isn't a one-trick pony. Hollow Knight is the one with the best combat and boss fights. Ori sets itself apart with its ridiculously fluid character and wordless, sad storytelling. Dead Cells merges the Metroidvania and roguelike genres perfectly. Obviously, these things are not the end-all and be-all of these games, but I think it really shines a light on what makes these indie games feel so much more fresh than the AAA games that we usually get, which seem to have a baseline that they want to hit for everything and just hit that and then move on. Ghostrunner is another one of those games that I think just focuses a lot on creating 1 or 2 perfect systems for the game, and I think that's why it had such an impact on me. Basically, Ghostrunner is a game centered around 3D platforming and one-hit kill, fast as hell combat. And let's start with that last thing. The game is fast. Look, I suck at video games. I'll be completely honest. I love them, but I am very bad at them. I've finished a lot of tough games, but mainly out of sheer stubbornness and not actual skill. But you know that montage you just saw? Yeah, that's me. I know, right? I'm like super, guys, I'm super cool in this game, I promise. I wasn't nearly that good when I first started playing the game. I mean, it took me 3 whole levels to even get the muscle memory of the controls and not constantly throw myself off cliffs, but the game does a great job of trying to be tough enough to force you to actually get good at it while not being frustrating in doing so. When I replayed the game, I beat every encounter so fast and fluidly, it basically turned me into one of those scenes where the hero takes out his sword really fast, then all of a sudden everyone in like a 3 mile radius gets cut in half. You know what I'm saying. So the real question is, how does the game turn me, who on multiple occasions has been scared of his own reflection, into Post Malone from the Rockstar music video? Well, by absolutely stomping my ass into the ground, apparently. Throughout the whole game, I probably only beat a combat encounter on my first try like 3 times, and keep in mind, these combat encounters can have anywhere between 3 to 9 people, so it's not a huge amount, and there are over 100 encounters here, I guess, although I'm not including encounters with like 1 or 2 people that are actually just tutorials or cooldowns. What I'm basically trying to say here is that I was not good enough to beat almost any part of this game without trying at least twice. I died a lot in this game. At first it was because I was just doo-doo, but after that the game just got naturally harder as it progressed, as it should. The key to not making this frustrating though was A, the low number of enemies, and B, the instant opportunity to redeem yourself after death. Probably the most frustrating types of games aside from those intentionally designed to piss you off are Souls games or roguelikes, because there's no ability to instantly retry the thing that you messed up. If you die a good ways into a location in the Souls games or at a boss in some cases, not only do you have to retry the boss from the beginning, a fight that'll usually take a good few minutes, but you also have to get the game to load and make your run up to the boss, which can sometimes be more grueling and frustrating than the boss itself. In roguelikes, you sometimes have to redo half an hour to hours of progress in order to get back to the point that you messed up, only to potentially lose and have to do it again. I'll actually never forgive Risk of Rain 2 for on like 30 occasions throwing some random BS at me while I'm at full health to instantly kill me while I'm like 90 minutes into a run when I was trying to get that stupid 20 stages trophy. I would show you video evidence of this happening like dozens of times, but I deleted it off of my drive because I want to forget about it, and I don't want to go into that hellscape for the foreseeable future. One-hit kill games usually curb this issue. They're well known for giving you a short scenario that you have to beat, after which you move on, or if you die, you get put right back to do it again. In my opinion, however, Ghostrunner's style of high-velocity gameplay mixed with keeping the number of enemies limited is something that allows it to avoid the inherent frustrations of one-hit kill games like Hotline Miami, a big inspiration for this game. Hotline Miami is great, it truly is, and like I said, it avoids the frustrations of long run-ups or encounters. But the issue is that if you're not actual Jesus, a lot of the game boils down to just abusing AI and hiding in a corner like a little itty-bitty piss boy. Any stray bullet will immediately kill you, and with varied enemy placements and larger areas, especially later in the game, and especially later in the second game, you can't go around dodging and weaving everything unless you're insanely good at these types of games, or you're immune to frustrating scenarios and practice 1,000 times. I've beaten both of these games, twice actually, but the issue is that, especially since it's harder with a controller, a lot of the times I felt like I had to hide in a corner and shoot so that a bunch of enemies would come through the door and I would just take them out as they were it felt like cheating, kind of. I still went around and played the game how it was, I guess, kind of meant to be played, with all the running around and ducking into rooms and stuff, but sometimes it felt like I was forced to do that really cheap tactic, otherwise I would never be able to continue. You can't hide in Ghostrunner like you can in Hotline Miami, and abusing AI is way tougher, especially with so many enemy types standing completely still and firing ranged attacks, but the balance came from the enemy placement and the restraint by the team to not have encounters in the later half of the game be filled with like 40 different enemies all gunning at you at the same time. The enemy types are also really diverse, but limited in number. You need to understand how a good dozen or so of them work, and they all work really differently, but a lot of the tougher enemies are used sparingly and at appropriate moments. And no matter how tough they are, you can always find ways to circumvent their attacks as long as you're smart about it. Ghostrunner is tough, and it got tougher as it went along, but it always got tougher in tune with me getting better. If I had a chart where I plotted deaths versus hours, it would probably look like this. Wait, no, that doesn't make any sense. It would look like this. But that makes it seem like I died way more in the second half than I did in the... Okay, just ignore all of that. Here's a bar graph to say what I'm talking about, okay? I'm sorry, I'm bad at geology. The game ramps up its difficulty perfectly. I always felt like I was good enough to win an encounter. I just had to be quick, plan out a good route, and keep my wits about me. And the game would only ask me to do that for like 10 to 30 seconds at a time with its short encounters. For somebody who doesn't really play games that much or doesn't play them at all, this might not be your cup of tea just because it asks a lot from me from a quick thinking and movement perspective. My sister's played a good few games. She's played Uncharted, Infamous, Need for Speed, and a few others, and she did have a hard time with this game. She quit after like the second level. If you're somebody who does play games pretty often though, I think you'll find that this game does have a very, very, very well crafted difficulty. Although give yourself the first few levels to understand how the controls work and everything. It can be a bit difficult to get adjusted. This is honestly one of the most well-balanced games I've ever played, in my opinion. And on top of that, it has the inherent satisfaction of one-hit kill games. And on top of that, it also has, the really well done impact for the actual slices of you killing people. That sentence kind of broke apart, didn't it? There are a lot of other things I could talk about, like the abilities or the bosses or the really interesting upgrade system. I actually might talk about that for like just 2 seconds here. You can honestly change the game quite a bit with upgrades that allow you to deflect bullets or slow down time on kills, but you have to fit them into this board with Tetrisy pieces, making you have to think super critically not only on what you need the most, but how you can fit it optimally. But I'm not going to go too far into that because I don't want this video to be overly long. So I'm just going to shout out the other major part of this game, which is its platforming. The platforming in this game is incredibly smooth, and the great balancing of this game is present in this aspect of it as well. It's really easy to make platforming either super easy or super difficult, or sometimes in games that aren't true platformings, just sort of weak overall, but Ghostrunner nails this too. I didn't die nearly as much to platforming as I did in combat, which is good because in platforming you only really have yourself to be mad at rather than an enemy, but the game's movement, its jumping, sliding, dashing, grappling, they're all really satisfying, fast, and forgiving, while also making you occasionally multitask or making sure you're paying attention to what's in front of you. My brother is not the biggest fan of platformers. They're usually really hit or miss for him, and even the ones that hit are never considered like his favorite games of all time, but he really liked the platforming here. He said he actually preferred it slightly to the combat. He really likes the combat too, but the platforming just really stuck with him. He said that it made you feel really cool without ever having to make you pull off a super intense string of jumps. The game is not bulletproof. I'd say its bosses are a bit lacking. They're not bad by any stretch, but maybe not to the level of the rest of the game. And the narrative is just kind of serviceable. I mean, it's mainly there for a backdrop, so it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, the thing is that you can't really think of much, or at least I can't think of much in this game that's worse than pretty solid. It's not my favorite game of the year, but it's really close to a perfect one, and I would recommend it to anyone who took a look at this video and thought, hey, that looks pretty cool. Also, everything I said is completely invalid for the hardcore mode of this game. That thing will eat you alive. Okay, have a nice day.